Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Chuck, and I'm a marketing specialist here at Study USA. We'll just take a couple of moments here before we begin so that more people can join us. But in the meantime, we love to know in the comments what you think is the biggest choice you have to make to study abroad. So today is day 4 of our series, My Dream, My Destination, alongside our partner Toefl. And we've had the opportunity these past couple of weeks to speak with students and faculty who once had a dream and are now actually living it out in schools across the US. So deciding to follow our dreams is a choice, and it's one of many that we make during our lives, and particularly our study abroad. Choices, how to navigate our study abroad journey is the topic of today's live session. So our guest, Valeria Rivera, might be a familiar face for some of you who've joined our previous sessions, and she'll be speaking about the choices that led her to finding success in her student journey. And she's here to share the choices that you can make to find success in yours. But before we can get into that, I wanted to mention that you should stay tuned for the end of the session, as we will be providing you with a very helpful promo code for the Toefl test registration fee. On top of that, Study in the USA will be offering a $50 Visa gift card to one special winner. So tag your friends in the comment section and we'll do a drawing at the end of the session to let you know. And also, we will be having a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and either Valeria or one of the Toefl moderators overseeing the chat will get to answering those as soon as possible. So with all of that being said, Valeria, for those who weren't able to be at your last session, which you can still watch on Facebook, by the way, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chuck. First of all, I'm so happy to be here today. Hi, guys. Nice to be back. But yeah, my name is Valeria. I'm an international student from El Salvador. I graduated this May from Lycoming College as a business and commercial design double major with an art history minor. I, being out of college is kind of crazy right now, but I was a 4-year undergraduate degree seeker. I did a lot when I was in school, and well, now I'm in my OPT year, in California, working as a marketing specialist for Study in the USA.
We're glad to have you on the team. And so since today's session is all about choices, we kind of wanted to start at the beginning of your journey and make our way through your whole student study abroad journey. And so why did you choose to study abroad, and what were the most important choices you had to make before the journey began?
Yeah, well, honestly, I knew about studying abroad since I was very little. I can't tell you exactly what it was about it that intrigued me. I just remember being like 5 years old and just like knowing about it and just like really wanting it. As I grew older, of course, I was able to like rationalize my dream a little bit more. And I think that I was always just a very curious and a very curious person, like eager to like meet new people and just like see different things, be like get to know different cities, different parts of the world. And so studying abroad combined with like my love for academia and just studying, it was very appealing for me to like pursue. What was the second part of the question? Sorry.
It was, what was the most important choice you had to make before your journey began?
Yeah, well, I I think that the most important choice that I made was the school that I attended, really. Um Yeah, it was a school that I attended because, obviously, like, you're going to be there for 4 years, 2 years, however long your degree is. And so you want to choose a school that, meets all your expectations when it comes to like academics, of course, but also like your social life, of course, is going to be very important. You're going to be living on campus. You're going to be spending 24/7 there, especially if it's a residential campus. And so you want to be in an environment that really just supports what you want out of your study abroad experience.
Yeah, and I think listening to your story, people will, quickly come to find out that this eagerness to put yourself in these situations, meet new people, go to new places is all a part of who you are now. And I think that's been a really cool part to hear about your story. And so the next question is, what was the best advice that you received at that early stage in your journey?
Best advice, I don't know how early it was in my journey, but I think that about second or third year into college, I I was talking to a friend and I was very defeated because it was just a very hard week. that week, I was feeling very defeated and when it came to like my social life, for example. I, just felt like I didn't have like as many friends as I wanted to at that point in my college career. I felt like academically, like I wasn't achieving as much as I envisioned myself doing so at one point or another. And so I was talking to a friend of mine and I was telling him, I feel like I failed, I feel like I came all the way here. I feel like I spent all the money that I spent. And I haven't done what I wanted to do, what I was meant to do here. And he looked at me and he said, Val, you don't actually fail until you give up on yourself. And that hit home, honestly. Like I've taken that advice or that saying with me ever since, because every time that I'm going through a hard time, every time that I'm going through like just a really challenging time, and I think to myself like, oh, like maybe I'm not fit for this, maybe I'm just not able to, do a certain thing. I tell myself now, no, Val, like you only fail until you give up on yourself. And once you swallow that pill, I think it helps you, especially like studying abroad and being so out of your comfort zone, all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great friend to have, and even better advice. And so I guess, what factors did you consider for choosing Lycoming College then?
Well, with Lycoming, it's very hard to choose a school from abroad, right? So I didn't have the ability to go on campus, see the school for myself. And so when you're looking at everything on a screen, I think that, my main purpose of studying abroad, of course, is like to get my degree. And so the choices of majors were very important to me. I loved that Lycoming was like super small, but has like a ton of majors to choose from. I think, don't quote me on this because I don't actually know the exact number, but it's probably like close to 30 majors that you can choose from. And being the very undecided teenager that I was at that time, it was very appealing to me, I wanted to go to a school where it was achievable or doable for me to like jump from one major to another completely different one, if I decided to do so. And so that was the number one thing. Small campus community, honestly, was very appealing to me. I was very timid when I was, when I was 18. I really didn't have that many like social skills, like making friends in English was definitely a challenge, because it's not your native tongue. So it's not like you're as comfortable as in your in your, in your language.
Yeah.
So yeah, the small campus community was also very appealing. Yeah, I would say that those were the two main factors.
I think that's such a cool perspective to have, especially when you're so young. You kind of have an idea what you want to do, but you don't really know what you want to do. So having
Exactly,
the option
exactly.
to change over to a new major whenever you want, I think that's what makes the US such a great destination to study abroad at. Um, so that kind of leads into the next question, which is, what makes a school the right fit, and what advice would you give students for choosing the right fit school?
Right. Well, the right fit doesn't look the same for anyone, because everybody's different. And I mean, some people have bigger personalities, they thrive in like big lecture halls, other people thrive in like one-on-one conversations. Some people love a huge campus. It almost feels like a city, we need to take a shuttle to get from one point to another. Other people just really just want to get to their class in 5 minutes. I was the type of person who like left their room at like 5 minutes before class started, not joking. um so yeah, there's just so many stuff that makes each university unique, and so you have to sit down with yourself and just ask yourself what you want from your study abroad experience, but also what kind of student you are, where you thrive the most. Are you a more timid person? Are you more outgoing? Are you super competitive? Are you really just looking to really push yourself for the next 4 years and take super challenging courses? Or do you like want more work-life balance, for lack of a better term, and to just be able to like have a social life and like also do school and get your degree and have a side hustle, whatever you want to do. So all these questions are very important to ask yourself before you actually enroll in school, of course, or when you start researching for schools. And once you get those answers, you'll be able to narrow down your search, and find a school that will realistically give you the flexibility to do that.
I think that's great advice, and keeping this open mind to not just being stuck on this one school. Like, really get to know yourself, get to know what you want out of your experience. And there's tons of universities that you might not even have considered that might be a better fit for you. And so how do you think that timing plays into making decisions? Like if you had to do this all over again, knowing what you learned along the way, would your choices be any different?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, timing is very important, that's saying like right person, wrong time. Like there's it could be applied for like to a lot of stuff, So definitely just being in the right moment to study abroad, to take on that challenge is definitely like very important. But at the same time, like you're never quite gonna feel ready, it's never quite gonna feel like the right time to drop your country and like move somewhere else. The right time can be like after you finish high school, of course. But yeah, that's my philosophy when it comes to that. And then can you repeat the second part of the question?
It is, would your choices have been any different?
Right. Okay. So I mean, okay, so my therapist always says hindsight is always 2020. And that means, but that what that basically means is that, you know, looking back on your past decisions or your past self with the knowledge that you have today, with the lessons that you've learned, you can tell yourself like, oh, if I would have done this, I would have gotten this out of it. And it's so easy to get stuck on that. And I really just try not to do that for myself, just because, what's done is done. I've learned what I've learned. And I really encourage everyone to have that same philosophy, especially when it comes to university. There's always going to be like a regret or so that you have. Maybe you wish you would have majored in this instead of that, or maybe you wish that you would have taken an internship like earlier on. So whatever it is, know that living. Sorry, pronunciation is like rough today. You keep living, you keep learning, and all that matters is that you yeah you take something from what you've done in the past. Just make the best out of what you have right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess this next question then is for all of you who are watching. Feel free to put in the comments and what do you think about there being such a thing as the right time, or do you think that you should take charge and make things happen on your own? So while you put that in the comment section below, I just wanted to remind all of you to stay tuned for an offer from the Toefl brand at the end of this session. We will also be having a Q&A at the end of the session. So feel free to put any questions you have in the chat, and either Valeria or one of the Toefl moderators will get to answering those at the end of the session or as soon as possible. So this next question is that TOEFL is widely considered, the best English language test, but within the TOEFL itself, there are a few options to choose from. So having taken both the TOEFL IBT and the TOEFL Essentials tests, can you give us a little insight into each one?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's important to note that I took the ABT exam when I was 18. So I was applying for college in 2018. Took it around September, maybe. And yeah, that was 4 years ago. And then the essentials test I took this month, actually, a couple of weeks ago. So, one is like fresher in my mind, of course, but the main difference, of course, between the two is the time difference. The IBT takes 3 hours to complete, and the essentials is half that time, so 1 hour, an hour and a half. And IBT is more IBT tests your academic English level versus essentials. It also tests your academic English level, but it also includes more like colloquial everyday English. And the pace of the exam is a lot quicker, of course. It takes less time to complete, but the way that questions are thrown at you in the essentials exam just goes a lot quicker than IBT. So for example, in the listening section, I believe it's the first section of the exam, at least for essentials, you have a recording that is being played at you, and then you have a question that you answer immediately after, and you have 15 seconds. I could be wrong about that, but you have a few seconds to answer. And that's how it goes. Versus IBT, you have a recording and it's a conversation, and then you're asked several questions after that, So, throughout the whole exam, those differences are like, there are very distinctive differences between the two.
So which format did you take the test in? And do you think that the format that you take it in affects your performance?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, IBT, I took it at a regular testing center, you know, you had the testing room, people around you, the person monitoring you, and then you always have to show up like a few, maybe like half an hour before the exam actually starts. You just like get everything like prep. Um, yeah. And then with the essentials exam, you take it at home actually. And that looks very different. Like the preparation before you actually take the exam looks very different than IBT, of course, just because you know you're with yourself with your computer and you log into the ETS account. I would suggest a few minutes before. You have 12 minutes. You have until like 12 minutes after like your official start date. But I would highly suggest like logging in like 10 minutes before, just to make sure. And yeah, you download a software that basically allows a proctor to take control of your desktop. That sounds very scary, but it's not, I promise you. To take control of your desktop, and they like look at you through the camera. They can listen to you as well. They're just there to make sure that you're not cheating or doing something that you're not supposed to, you know. So yeah, that's basically the process before it. It probably takes like 5 minutes if you have good internet connection. It could take a little bit longer if you're like struggling to figure things out. But yeah, I mean, it's just they're very two different experiences. You know, one is in the comfort of your home, on your desk, in a safe, comfortable environment. The other one is a little bit more, you feel a little bit more pressured, a little bit more nervous, of course, since you're in an environment that's so unfamiliar. And I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. I would just argue that it depends on each person. Personally, I do prefer taking a test from home, but I also don't mind going to a testing center. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how would you suggest to someone what test can be right for them?
Well, there were several things that you need to ask yourself before like making that decision. And it all goes back, you know, like we were talking about before with the universities. It's all about asking yourself what kind of person you are, what kind of student you are. The duration of the exam is definitely like a big difference. So if you're someone that can sit down for 3 hours and concentrate and like give all your all of you and like make a great job throughout all 4 sections, great for you. IBT is probably like a good choice for you, you know. I believe over 1,100 institutions worldwide actually accept the IBT exam. And so if you're still unsure what schools you're applying to, IBT might be like a safer bet. But you know, with essentials, if you're someone who maybe has like a shorter like attention span, you know, like likes to like for things to move quicker, if you're also looking to test your English abilities outside the academic setting, I would argue that essentials is probably the best choice for you in that regard. You know, and I could like list a lot of like differences here and there between IBT and like essentials. Like for example, IBT has like longer reading passages, like the writing prompts are there, it's expected more out of you, you know, out of the writing prompts. I believe there's like a full essay exam and you have like 30 minutes to prepare. So it's a lot more rigorous. It's a lot more academic, you know. But yeah, just ask yourself what kind of student you are, what realistically where you do best. If you're great at standardized tests, IBT might probably be like the best choice for you. If you're someone like me who struggles with it, maybe essentials.
Yeah, I mean, we really appreciate all that insight. And I mean, there's definitely a lot to consider when you choose one test or the other, but I think that the advice that you gave is definitely given our viewers a lot to consider. So both the TOEFL IBT and the Essentials tests each have 4 sections: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So how do you choose to prioritize your time as you study for the 4 different sections? And did you spend an equal amount of time, and how would you kind of the advice you would give for students looking to divvy their time up?
Yeah, well, I always recommend students, my form of like studying for all these exams is probably taking a practice exam before you actually start studying, just for you to like completely just take a practice exam, like completely follow the rules of your time expectations, any other rules that there might be like in place, you know, and just see how you perform that first time that you're taking the exam. And then look at the sections that you struggle with. Maybe they're all 4 of them. Maybe you're not happy with all 4 sections, and so you want to improve in all of them. Great. Maybe you're great at listening, but then reading comprehension, writing are like particularly low. I would say just focus on the sections that you want to improve your score in. If you're happy about your score in one of the sections or two of the sections, I'm not going to say like completely ignore them, not disregard them until like the exam, but don't spend as much time practicing for those sections because you're already doing good at it. You know, you want to focus your resources, you want to allocate your resources to the sections that need the most help, you know. So for example, in my case, speaking is probably like my best section. I'd argue. Reading comprehension, however, I'm not great at like reading passages and like answering questions. I don't know what it is. I'm not good at it. And so, you know, if I was practicing for the IBT or essentials again, I would focus on the reading comprehension because I know that that's where like the most points are gonna like, I'm gonna miss the most points in. And versus the speaking, yeah, like you take a practice exam at first just to see your score, and then, you know, maybe I take one or two practice exercises, and then with the final like practice exam before you take the test, just to see like where you're at right before the actual exam, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's what's worked for me. Hopefully that helps someone out there.
I mean, I always kind of get into that routine too, where like I'll face a challenge that's a little too hard, and I go back to studying. Maybe it was a little easier for my ego, but yeah, so there are a lot of options out there for resources and to prepare for the test. So how did you choose what to use and what to trust?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, like you said, out there. I was Googling like practice exams for when I, you know, when I took IBT and like essentials, and a lot comes up. And so I'd say like the source that I trust is like the ETS website. You know, they have for essentials, I believe there's 3 practice exams and they're all free. It's same for IBT, but they're all free. They take you through a pretty good representation of what like the exam will actually look like. They are the same duration, all 4 sections, the same order. You know, the questions that you're asked are very similar to what you can expect from the exam. And so, you know, if you take those practice exams, you'll get a pretty good idea of how you'll perform. And the good thing about these exams too is that it actually shows you like the answer as you go. And so, you know, something that I don't particularly like about taking practice exams and then like reviewing the answers is that when you're answering a section, you know, after you completed that section or all the sections, you get the ones that you got incorrect. And you know, you notice it and you kind of like make a note of that. Okay, that one was incorrect, but I don't know what it is, but I personally like I think that I take a lot more from the feedback, from getting immediate feedback when I answer the question. So that's something that I really like about the practice exams on the ETS website.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, definitely if you're going to study for the TOEFL, the best place to go is to TOEFL to find those resources. And so I think that is great advice. And so this next question is for everyone watching from home. So if you had the choice to go home after getting your degree or staying in the US to work, which would you choose? So as you put your answers in the chat below, I just wanted to mention that you all should stay tuned for an offer from the TOEFL brand at the end of the session. Also, we will be having a Q&A, so we haven't forgotten about your questions. We will get to those at the end of the session. So if you have any, continue to roll them in. So this next question, Valeria, is for you. So what inspired you to choose your current career path?
Oh, I mean, I was a very clueless teenager when I came to school. I knew what I didn't want to do. Like I knew I would never be a doctor or a lawyer. I had no idea what I really liked, honestly. Like I was always good at communication. I was always like the kid taking like AP like English, you know, and stuff like that. But I think that when I graduated high school, I was kind of like dumbfounded and I didn't know what career to choose. And so I went into Lycoming, and in my first what's it called, like academic advisor meeting that I had, I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of creative, you know, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. I thought about marketing from before I got to Lycoming just because I liked how versatile the major seemed. Like it could be applied to so many industries, so many like careers. And I thought to myself, like, well, like why not give it a shot? And I took a business class my first semester there. I liked it. Like I definitely grew to love it as I got deeper into the major. But I don't know, I guess I was just like lucky, I guess, that I just ended up choosing the right classes at the right time. It's talking about like the right time. In my first semester there, I also took a photo class, and I mean, like, sometimes when you're just like, you take a class and every time that you come out of it, or at least I hope that everybody has an experience like this, where like you come out of it and you're just like smiling and you're like, the world is good. Like, that's how I felt about it. And, little by little, I got just more eager to like take more art classes. I never considered myself an artist before I went to Lycoming, and I'm still hesitant to like put that label on myself. I call myself a creative. But yeah, I knew that art, more specifically like graphic design, brought a lot of joy to my life. So I decided to go for it, and luckily like marketing and graphic or commercial design, as the major was called, go pretty hand in hand. So I was pretty lucky in that regard.
And I think people have this mindset where you can't really do what you love for work, but it is possible. Like sometimes you might find something where it does align and you can do what you love as your full-time job. So how does the flexibility of a US education played into your education, your internships, or even your current career?
Oh, I mean, the flexibility of it was essentially what brought me here in the first place. Like speaking of like the choices that I made about studying abroad, that's something that I always loved about the US. Like the fact that you could come in, enroll in school, and 2 years into your degree, you can uh you can change your major. Like you have to declare major by the second year. And so as someone who was very undecided, that was very reassuring. So yeah, I mean, it played a huge part on the shaping of my career. I I mean, the reason why I became a double major and a minor is because of the flexibility that Lycoming gave me to accommodate my program to the classes that I wanted to take. Technically I wouldn't have been able to graduate with the two majors and a minor. But because, I made the appeals to the academic committee to, take X class instead of this or whatever, I was able to do that. The internships that I got, um, I love that I could take them for academic course credit. uh for art history minor, I was also part of like a symposium, my second semester of junior year. And that's something that I found really cool that I could do when I wasn't a major.
Mm.
It's just I've time after time I found that there's so much flexibility and so many options around you, when you come to the US, and because of the culture that people have here when it comes to like academia or like higher education, um, that you can really shape your career, during the 4 years as you want. It's just a matter of trying. There's no harm in trying.
I don't think it really would come to anyone's mind to like approach like the committee and tell them like this is how I want to shape my major, and like they are actually open to allowing you to do that. So I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't hurt to try, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. And like now that you say that, it you make me think like that's something that I always told my students. I used to be an international, not international, but just like orientation guide, for 3 years out of like the four that I was there, or two. I don't remember one. But yeah, I was an orientation guide. And every time that I got a new group of students, I always told them like, don't be afraid to ask for your professors for anything, whether that is maybe you want to tutor for their class, maybe you want to work for them on their research that they're doing. Maybe you want to work for the marketing department. Like there's so many things that I got to do around Lycoming because I asked them if I could do that, again, with the options. Like the world is your oyster when you're in university. Just come up to people, tell them what you want, tell them your story. And most of the time they'll be willing to help you, even if they don't say like yes to what you're immediately asking. They will redirect you to somewhere, that can offer the type of experience that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that is very important. And so when you were looking for like internships and jobs after that, what factors did you put into your decision-making process?
Well, I obviously, like, the job description was very important to me. I didn't I don't want to say that I knew exactly what type of job I was looking for out of college or like for internships. obviously like the field was like very specific, you know, marketing. I was interested in social media. I always wanted to do a little bit of advertising, PR, communications, you know, stuff like that. And I really love a job that just like allows me to do more than one thing, you know? Just because like I'm someone who gets bored very easily. And so like by having like multiple, not multiple roles, but just like different types of like things going on in my job, it's just very important to me to like keep myself like entertained and like invested. And so I would say like that's like the number one thing that I was looking for. And then location was actually really important. I've been looking to like always have remote experiences, not because I'm like against going into the office. But you know, like my first internship at Goodwill was during the pandemic. Um, and then the other company that hired me for my second internship was just a remote company. And yeah, but like if I remember when I was like applying for um jobs out of college, I told myself, okay, if I have to relocate, if I have to go into the office, I'm gonna go somewhere that's cool, you know? And so lucky me, like I ended up coming to California. Um, but yeah, those were the two main things.
Yeah, so with so many like postgraduate work opportunities, especially for international students, what made you choose an OPT and what made you choose study in the USA?
Yeah, well, for OPT, for those of you who are not familiar with OPT, there's CPT and OPT for practical training when you come into the US as a student visa holder. And so CPT is 12 is the experience, internship experience, or professional experience that you can get um, during your time as an undergraduate or as a student, period. And so that can be like volunteer work, that can be internships, that can be a full-time job or part-time job, actually. And yeah, you get up to 12 months. You can go over those 12 months, but if you go over, you're not eligible for OPT. If you stay under the 12 months, OPT is the experience that you can get after you complete your degree. And so that can be 1 to 3 years, depending on your major. If you're in the STEM field, you'll get up to 3 years. I know finance majors get 2, and then everyone else gets 1 year. But yeah, it's basically just kind of like I don't want to call it residency, because it's not like you're a resident of the US. You're still under the student visa, but you're able to live in the US legally and work legally full time, as long as what you're doing is what you studied, related to what you studied in school. And so that being said, I I saw a lot of benefits from, you know, applying for OPT. I mean, one, I wasn't ready to go home. I think that I was still, you know, coming out of college, I was just like so eager to like take on the world, you know, and stuff like that. I didn't want to go home yet, one, but also I saw a lot of benefit, like professional benefits that could come out of it, you know, of course, like expanding my network, getting experience, like, you know, working my career abroad was definitely going to be very appealing if I do end up going home and working from El Salvador. Um, so yeah, there was more to gain than to lose, you know, and also personally, like I thought it was just like really cool to just live, you know, by myself in the US outside of school, like just have my own apartment. And yeah, there was a lot more for me to gain personally than if I would have like gone home immediately after. And as for studying in the USA, I mean, well, I had two options for like jobs, right? So the other job offer that came up to me was like, it was also remote, but I was going to move to Philadelphia. And the type of jobs were actually like very similar. There were also like account management and stuff like that, marketing, and but the industry was very different, of course. And so I remember like talking to one of my mentors at Lycoming, just being like super just stuck, like not knowing like which one to choose, because of course like going to Philly at that moment is like very appealing to me, just because of the comfortness of it, you know, was going to be around the people that I had been friends with for like 4 years. I had a safety net there. It was familiar. I already knew that I liked the city, versus California. Like I never come to San Diego before I came here. So it was very daunting to kind of like just like move to a city that I have no idea what it's like. Um, Not to mention the fact that I had to like move across the US. But I guess that, you know, I really saw myself like in an international orientation. I loved it, you know, like I loved welcoming students in the US and just like talking to people from back home who are like hesitant to come to the US because of whatever fear. I've always loved like being that person that advocates for people to like come here, like just do it, like you won't regret it, because I know that it changed my life completely for the better. I changed, I was very timid, I was very insecure, and not to say that I don't have stuff to like work on anymore, but like definitely like a huge change from when I first came here. And so just like the mission, like the cost that I was going to be working for at study, I think just ended up like, in the location too, like it sounded cool to just move across the US. I ended up taking like a 3-day train ride from from Pittsburgh, no, from Harrisburg to San Diego, which was crazy. It was so crazy. But yeah, I mean, like I haven't looked back since, I've gotten like a lot of cool stories out of it and a lot of cool experiences. So
Definitely sounds like another case of the right time, right place. But if you are interested in pursuing an OPT, there is a lot that goes into, like, if you're a STEM major, like you get additional years. So definitely do your research. Study in the USA is a great research tool to use to learn about all of that stuff. So I definitely recommend that you visit us. And so as we get into this last stretch of questions, I did want to remind you all to stay tuned until the end of the session, as we will be providing you with a promo code from the Toefl brand, and we will also be having Q&A at the end of the session. So feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll get to answering them as soon as possible. And so what choices do you make to maintain a positive work-life balance?
that's a tricky one, honestly, because especially so soon out of college, I feel like a positive work-life balance is something that you learn how to do like in the years to come after graduation. It takes a lot of experience to really have like a healthy work-life balance. But I think that my approach to it so far has been, yes, I'm here for work, but I'm also here for myself, and so I like to do something before I start work, like that's for myself, like for my own well-being, whether that is like cooking for myself some breakfast, meditating in the morning, going on a run, whatever it is, that just you do it for yourself. Maybe you watch some TV, before, and then you go into work, you make your best there, of course, and then afterward, just I'm a huge advocate for just tuning off all responsibilities for just some time. Of course, there's gonna be days in which you have to be like on your email like after hours or whatever it is that you have to do. But I really just like to, again, just like take time for myself, and what that looks like, it really depends on the days. Some days I'm feeling more active. Sometimes that'll be like hanging out with friends or going out by myself or just like crashing and taking a nap, but yeah, just make sure that you are living like on a day-to-day basis. You are living, you're doing stuff for your work to enhance your professional career, but also to enhance who you are as a person, do something that makes you feel good.
Yeah, I do think that, I mean, life goes by so fast and it's hard to get caught up in this constant cycle of just making work your life. And I mean, you lose out on a lot of, opportunities, but also like the stress that builds up. You want to be able to work at your best, and having that balance helps you do that.
Yeah.
And so how do you choose what to do for fun?
I'm a very spontaneous person when it comes to like having fun, I think. Sometimes I don't know, I like to try new things, honestly. Like I'm a huge person for like, getting more experiences. I sometimes call myself like an experienced hoarder. Almost sounds weird and like negative, but I don't think of it that way. Um, yeah, when it comes to like having fun, I just think about like, I don't know, just stuff that hmm, new stuff to do. Like, there's always like a new place to like visit, like a new food to try. Um, I recently bought a surfboard, actually, like, something that I just like did spontaneously. It was something that I've always wanted to do, from like, early, probably since high school, I'd say. And I never gotten a chance to. So just like, trying out different stuff and keeping it new and fresh, I guess, is how I seek fun.
You're definitely going to have to join us again to update us about that whole surfing experience.
I don't have much faith in myself at that, but
Hope for the best. But this is our last planned question before we get into the Q&A. But if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice about how to best navigate the choices that you had ahead with respect to your study abroad journey, what would you have said to your younger self?
I would have said, it takes time to get to know yourself and what you want. I I would take it one step at a time, but at the same time also have long-term goals, So it's very tricky and it's a very slippery slope in my opinion, but from your first semester, think about where you want to be in 4 years. What kind of person do you see graduating? What achievements does that person carry under their belt, Um, and that can change, of course. Like, we change, we evolve, like our interests, you know, they narrow down or they expand. And so, yeah, like that can change. That's my point. But like my point is that still by having that vision of yourself in 4 years or however long it's going to be, you're always like aiming for something, and you're taking it one step at a time because like you're making those decisions on today that will lead you there. But as you know, it's important to just like have like long-term goals. Like
Yeah, that is important. So at this time, we'll be transitioning into our Q&A portion of the session. So if you have any questions, continue to roll them in and we'll try to get through as many as we can. Also, I'd like to take this time to once again thank you, Valeria, and also the Toefl brand for making this session possible. I did want to mention that the promo code for the Toefl test registration fee will also be shown here on the screen momentarily, so don't leave just yet. But Valeria, one of the questions that we had in the comments is, who do you talk with at the school that you're considering?
who do you mean like before you apply?
Yeah, like as you apply or you're going to, like, who is it that you can speak to about that process?
Yeah, there are several people that you can reach out to. I think there's always the admissions counselors, of course. I was a huge advocate for like emailing admissions counselors when I was like applying for college. Just like, you can ask them questions about like uh just the academic culture there or specific program questions or whatever it is. But obviously like when it comes to like more specific questions, they won't be able to answer them themselves, but they can redirect you to the person that can. You can also do your own research and, look up professors in the program that you're looking to apply if you have questions regarding that. Something that I did too was I looked up on Instagram. I looked up whatever hashtag students of that particular school use, and whatever username popped up, I just messaged them and I was like, hey, like I'm looking to apply to your school. Do you think that I can like talk to you for about 15 minutes and just like ask you a few questions that I have? Some people won't answer you, some people will though. And the people who will are very helpful to talk to. Because they're not trying to like sell you a product necessarily. If compared to like admissions counselors or like someone that works for the institution, they can give you more real, feedback, more unfiltered feedback. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I do think that, I mean, as you mentioned, there are people who are working for your best interest. So definitely seek them out, find them, and they'll be a ton of help on this journey that you're going to be on. So how can you get some means to afford a US college as an international student?
There are many options. I definitely could not afford like a 70K a year school, and so it will definitely depend on the school because some schools have different options. Other schools like don't offer any aid to internationals, but most of the time I'd say there is some form of like scholarship program that internationals can apply for. Sometimes they're very competitive. The bigger the school, like the more competitive it gets. So if you want to narrow down your chances, I would say small schools are probably like a safer bet, but it really depends case by case. I really don't narrow your search because of that. But yeah, there are merit-based scholarships. There's need-based financial aid. That's basically when you submit documentation proving your family's income, assets, etc. And so the school basically adjusts what you pay based on what you actually can pay,
Yeah.
There's loans, there's just maybe I know that a lot of the times like your own like governments for each country have some sort of like study abroad scholarship program. I know several friends actually that have studied abroad with the Salvadoran scholarship from the Salvadoran government that they use for their studies. And so there's so many options out there. Like it's all a matter of like doing your research. You know, we all go back to doing the research, like asking yourself like what you can afford, like what type of student you are, and to be able to like guide yourself, because there's a lot.
Yeah. So next question, hypothetically, if you were to create a plan for getting over 100 on the TOEFL test, what would it look like?
Okay. Um, Practice makes perfect. And I don't mean just like taking practice exams, but I mean practice English, like just using it, you know? So you want to be, if you have the ability, you want to be speaking to your peers or professors or like high school teachers, whoever it is, in English, you know, just like practice speaking in English. You want to be reading in English. You want to be listening to music in English. You want to watch movies, TV shows, just use English a lot. And of course, take the practice exams like we talked about earlier. But yeah, the more exposed you are to this language, the more used you're going to be at like reading it, listening to it, speaking it. So you're going to be more comfortable when it comes to like when the time comes to actually take the test.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention y'all got some really good questions here. So for what reasons do we need to take the TOEFL Essentials test?
For what reasons? Again, it all depends on what type of student you are and what you're looking for, you know? So I would say, again, if you don't perform as well and a slower pace, like longer exam, like IBT, because IBT also like, it really focuses on academic English skills, you know? Essentials is academic and everyday English. And so if your academic English is not as strong, maybe Essentials is a better option for you. If you really don't do well by like sitting down for 3 hours and prepping for like long essays and, you know, just doing all the work that comes with like IBT, Essentials is probably better for you. So there's no better than, you know, here. It's just two very different exams meant for different types of students.
Yeah, so this next question might be a little out of your area of expertise, but kind of thinking big picture here. So the question is, when you want to study pharmacy, which school would be best and which location? So if you're kind of bringing that out to a bigger point of view, like how do you recommend someone choose a school for a particular program?
Yeah, well, if I were you in this situation and I was looking for the best pharmacy programs out there or in the US, I would start off with like a simple Google search, you know, top pharmacy programs in the US. And you can see there if you think that those schools are too rigorous for you or like too competitive. Maybe you feel like you don't have like the statistics, the credentials to get into like those top programs, that you can like expand your search for still very good academic programs. Just because like they're not just because some schools are not part of like the top 10, you know, in the country, doesn't mean that they're not good programs. You know, they're just not going to be like ranking wise like the best in the country. But I would start there. There's also several websites online that can help you, like there are several like websites online that are sort of like search engines for universities in the US. One that I used a lot was called Big Future. And so, you know, you have the search bar and you can add filters to your search. So you can put like the amount that you're trying to pay, you know, the majors that you're looking for, the whatever it is. It has everything from like student statistics, demographics, to programs, to financial aid, to everything. So that's another option for you to like expand your search, you know, to see all the different pharmacy programs in the US. And then once you have an idea of like the names, you know, of the schools that have the program, I would say go into their website and look at their curriculum. You know, what exactly are you going to study once you get there? Talk to professors if, you know, you're still kind of like on the I would say talk to professors anyway, or just anyone from that program, just to get a better idea of what it's like, you know, and also like get to know like the people that are going to be teaching you. But yeah, like you know, it takes time to do the research. I know it's very exhausting. But I promise you that if you do it, it's gonna really pay off because you're most likely gonna find a program that's like really fits what you're looking for, you know?
Yeah, so this next viewer has two questions, so I'll ask you both and you can take them one at a time. But is TOEFL compulsory for Nigerian applicants? And then the second question is, do you know any school in the US currently offering admission scholarships for international students? And also feel free to think bigger picture there. But yeah,
Okay, so the first part of the question, is it like mandatory for Nigerian applicants? You said it right. Okay. Um, so the TOEFL is just mandatory for any international student that's coming from a non-English speaking country. So I don't know specifically about Nigeria, but my assumption is that yes, you will have to take the TOEFL exam. I would really encourage you to do your own research, of course, just to like double check. But that's when like I know that you'll be required to submit TOEFL best scores if you come from a country that's not English speaking. What was the second part of the question?
it was, do you know any school in the US currently offering admission and scholarships for international students?
Yes, I mean there's several out there actually, but Lycoming, not to just like only promote my alma mater, of course, but like Lycoming actually has a pretty generous scholarship for international students. And one of my best friends from Lycoming is actually from Nigeria. Shout out to Iniquity. But yeah, I mean, there are several like schools out there. It's not, the scholarships are not specifically for like one region most of the time. Some schools do have like, if you come from X background, like we'll give you, I don't know. But those are like more like very niche scholarships, I'd say, and like usually bigger schools. So yeah, I mean, just do your research. Like there's a lot of schools out there offer like international student scholarships.
Yeah, so we only got a couple more questions left here, but the next one is TOEFL or IELTS? Which one do you prefer for more chance to get into international universities, or I mean US universities?
It's hard to say just because I've never taken the IELTS. You know, TOEFL, like the IBT TOEFL is accepted in 11,000, more than 11,000 like schools worldwide. So definitely, you're probably gonna find a school that like accepts like the TOEFL exam. It's a pretty safe bet. But yeah, just because of my lack of experience with the other exam, I couldn't really speak on that.
Yeah, and I do think that with all the products TOEFL has and all the resources and just the different tests, like some tests will fit the need that you're looking for. So I think that TOEFL, you can't go wrong with the TOEFL test. And so this next question I'll answer, but it is, do you have link to accredited online scholarship degree courses? And to that, I wanted to say that Studying the USA is a great resource. We have a lot of scholarships that we have listed on the site. And so you can just go through and filter through and I mean, when it comes to applying for scholarships, the more you apply for, the better chance you have of getting one. So just continue to put in those applications and eventually it will end up paying dividends. And so this next question is the last question we have, Valeria. And it is there any free test simulation with results that we can take prior to the real test so that we can prepare well to get the preferred result?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the practice exams available in the ETS website are a pretty accurate representation of what you can expect in the actual test day. And like I was saying, like it lasts the same amount of time, same amount of questions are asked, same format really. So yeah, I would highly encourage everybody to go in the ETS website and take, if not all of them, at least one practice exam before you actually go into the test, because you'll really get to see what it would be like to be taking the TOEFL.
Yeah, so, with that being said, I just wanted to thank everyone once again for joining us today. I hope you were able to have a great session and learn some valuable tips from Valeria. And to Valeria and the TOEFL brand, I just wanted to once again say thank you for making this all possible. And with that, I guess I just hope you all have an amazing day.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.